Stupid headphones. They just cut out. I don't know what the deal is.
It's not the headphones so much on this end. It's the Dean. Are you getting him jittery?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll have to. Now I got the echo. I don't get the echo with your headphones, so I would say put your headphones on.
Well, they quit on me. I can't hear anything.
Oh, okay. But you see, Dean, do you hear that echo too?
I do not hear an echo.
All right. Maybe it's just me. You don't hear any echo when I talk.
I don't hear an echo.
Yes,
Okay.
I hear an echo.
You did hear it?
Yes.
Okay. So we got to figure that out real quick. Yeah, Delaney just said echo, echo, echo.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any of those.
Okay, so Dean, you say something.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testes.
All right, so it's on me. It's because when Scott talks, there's no echo. When I do, there is. So,
well, why were you in me?
Because it's usually you.
Locations.
Yeah, on that stuff. Hold on. Let me get out and get back in. Hold on a second. Or actually, let me go to settings first. Sorry, people. We're going to go here in a second. Okay, default microphone, default speakers, Yeti microphone, reduce echo cancellation.
Sounds
Echo
like
cancellation.
You're in the Astrodome in 1980, 70.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I hear my own echo now.
Okay, let me do echo cancellation. Mic background, stereo audio, automatically mic volume. All right, let me hear myself now. I still got it. Damn it.
Hello.
Now coming to bat, Bobby Bonilla. Was that better?
Keep talking.
Test. Echo cancellation has been checked.
Yeah, you sound better.
Okay, that sounds better. Let's say something real quick and then we'll get started, Dean. I mean, Scott.
I think I heard myself.
Okay. All that empty space in your head, Dean.
Say something again, Dean.
Say something.
Okay, let's just go with this, and I can adjust as we go. But you're not hearing my echo anymore?
Mine is echo. So do I have echo cancellation on my side?
Let's see.
Yeah, if you go to settings, go to settings, audio, and say.
Yeah, okay, echo cancellation is on.
Is that it? Well, I heard myself.
I don't know.
All right.
I don't know. What if you shut the whole thing down and start over?
Actually, that sounds good. I think we're good now. All right, so let's just get started here. And I can still hear myself, but I'll work with that. I'll mess with that as we go. You guys are good. All right. Yeah. Welcome into a lively Bite Me podcast this week. Fresh off the water, new waters. You're shaking your head. Did that sound bad? It did? Okay, I'll start over. Let me see. What in the hell? Audio. All right. Test. Yeah. Oh, that's still there. Test. Damn it. Test. That better?
It sounds fine again. I haven't heard an echo yet.
Oh, y'all echoing like crazy on my end, both of y'all.
All right. And it looks like it's Delaney's fault. Little echo with Dean. All right, hold on. Let me. You hear me now?
Yeah. Yep, heard you twice.
Okay. All right, let's not put this off anymore. We'll get started. Okay, now you hear me. I muted it. I wanted to see what would happen on the echo now. All right, we'll just get started. We'll go from here. Sorry, people. That's a little longer than usual, but we'll get started. Promise you it's going to be a good show. All right. Welcome into the Bite Me podcast, a very lively show for you guys this week. We got onto some new water last week. We had the offshore show, and in the meantime, Captain Dean and our better halves and myself and our better halves we're out in Costa Rica. We're going to get some of that going for you. We got some more videos coming. Dean's son actually took some other really good stuff that we're going to get to you guys as soon as he's done with that. But we have some topics this week. Here we are. We're sitting in the third week of April, and there's a lot of stuff happening all across the board. But I do want to start with the usual notes that we need to make. Subscribe to the podcast, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's worth reiterating. We have switched in terms of the data and analytics that we get, which is always good, which helps us realize what topics people like the most, which topics they want to hear more, etc., to Podbean. So I would say go to podbean.com and you can subscribe and you can go anywhere and subscribe, whether it's iTunes or Spotify or whatever. But at Podbean, we can certainly get you subscribed there, and you'll get the notices right away. Other than that, we got the Bite Me group page. We've got several things that are working with in the future. All right, this is really sounding bad, and I can tell by your face, Dean. It sounds bad. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave the studio and come back in. If you're live, give me one more second.
I can't listen to an hour of that.
It's weird because I don't hear it. I don't hear it at all.
See, you're loud and clear now. I hear myself echo.
There's slight echo on you, but I don't hear any echo.
Oh, now you got echo back again.
All right, test.
John, while you were gone, I had no echo. You came back, I got echo.
All right, let me change the. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll change the audio, the headphones. It might be from the headphones. So let me change the headphones and see what that does, and we'll go from there. Speaker.
Valley cap. Valley cap's on.
All right, test. Hey,
that's better.
Test. Better?
It's fine. From what I hear it.
Oh shit! Now Scott's got the echo.
Hold on, I'm changing it again. Test. How's that?
You're good.
Say something, Scott.
It sounds fine on this end, and I don't know what the hell's going on.
Scott has a crazy echo now.
Look at something on the mic, I guess.
Whoa. That was weird.
All right. I'm sorry to do this on the fly, but I'm okay now, right, Dean?
I can hear you good. I hear myself echo.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. Test. You got that?
Huh? Say it again.
Test. You heard me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Dean, you hear me?
Do I still have an echo now?
No, you do not.
I just disconnected the microphone.
Okay. Dean, do you have me?
Something going on with that mic.
With yours?
And now we lost Dean completely.
Hold on. I think that was more of a.
Dean's muted.
Let's see what he did.
Okay, what you got now?
Okay. Everybody good?
Are we all
I'm
good
good.
now?
No,
I'm good.
I'm good. No echo.
Yay.
Good. No echo. Good.
You're-
No echo.
You're
How
good
about
on
that?
my end. I got you.
All right.
Echo.
It only took us 10 minutes and 38 seconds. Here we go, people. Sorry, I promise it's going to
Hey,
be a
well,
great show.
Okay.
All right. I think
Take
I
it
got
from
it
the
figured out
top.
now. Take it from the top. Welcome
feel
in.
like
Welcome
the
into the Bite Me podcast. What are you talking about? I'm going to have to start again. Welcome in. What are we doing here? This is a bleep show. God almighty. And Caleb's not even here. Welcome into the Bite Me podcast. I am John Lopez. You're not going to believe some of the stuff that goes on off air, but it's all good now. We have the podcast. We are live on YouTube. You're welcome to join us there every Tuesday at 3:30 if you'd like. And of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts right here for the Bite Me podcast. Easy to find, easy to search. And of course, I've been saying this. I said this a couple of weeks ago. Let's get it done this time. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcast and you'll get noticed. But I know Podbean has been really good to our listeners if you want to get the notices. And the reason is not all, when I switched the podcast to Podbean, which is better for us in terms of data and research, getting people what they want to hear. I can get all the numbers on which topics people want to hear more of, et cetera. When I transferred everything, not all the shows transferred to Spotify and Apple. You can get every single show we've ever done on Podbean. So I wanted to give you that right there. And of course, we'll dig in here into the topics. We got a lot of them for you, but also don't forget to join the Bite Me group page. So here we go. We did the offshore show last week. Cap Scott and myself with Greg Verm and Nick Haddad joined us from Release Them Right. And it was really, really a lot of fun. Let's get back into the base systems and let's explain to you some of the things that, when you're out on the water, sometimes you're inspired. you get inspired for some topics and some things that we do here on the podcast. Dean, one thing that was talked about when we were out on the water 3 times, we were in Costa Rica out on the water, and it was kind of cool. Was the stink was real, man. And that's something that our listeners can certainly relate to. You would think you're going to Costa Rica, you're going to go deep sea fishing. You had a good day the first day. Oh my gosh, let's get out there, catch some roosters. Oh my gosh, let's go catch some Cabera snapper. Let's catch this and that. Having a bad day translates to every continent. I mean, it translates to every body of water. It was pretty wild, man. We stunk loud.
Yeah. Well, that was a smackdown is what it was. Then you think, and it is just the same as it is all around the world. I mean, people have crazy high expectations when they come here and fish Aransas Pass. It's like, man, we're going to the coast. And of course, everybody's expectations are sky high the day before, the morning of, and the fish sometimes have other intentions.
Well, it led me, Scott, to believe, and you've gone on a lot of these, adventures into other places, whether it's Belize or wherever. You still got to kind of look at this is the topic. This is the thing for a lot of our listeners that I wanted to talk about, Scott. You still got to kind of plan when you're going to be there. And we got there right at the start of a new moon, and we had some really good days, but we had that really bad day. Like you think, hey, I'm going to Costa Rica. Hey, I'm going to Belize. I'm going to catch a mess of fish. Nah, man, if you're going to go, you got to be able to make sure you got the right plans, and you're still looking at the same things that we look at here.
Yeah, I always tell people to, they start talking to me about tarpon trips back in November, December, or January, and they want to pick a date. I just tell them, avoid that full moon, man. Avoid booking me on the full moon or the 2 or 3 days afterwards, because I know my tarpon are going to get weird. As far as redfish, it varies. Sometimes it seems like it really affects them. Sometimes they're just fine. But definitely makes a big difference on the tarpon.
And some of those offshores and Dean, I know you got something to say here, but Why the heck did your son bring a banana? He actually brought a banana to make matters worse and feed into the reputation even more.
We can blame it on whatever, you know. I'm trying to, I mean, you want to talk about weird fish? I was back on the water today, and it was decent. I mean, we caught some fish, but I didn't see any bananas, and I mean, we struggled a little bit today as well. I mean, fishing is what it is. Just a prime example of what we deal with. I mean, if you want to play this game, ain't nobody a hero every day. You go out there and you deal with it. You can fly to Costa Rica. You can go to Puerto Connor. You can go wherever you want. And the fish are they're gonna have their own rhythm to what they're gonna do. But you know, we rebounded. You know, the very next day,
big time. Yeah.
Or it was 2 days. The 2 days later, we go out and rebounded well. The guys today, the guys I had with me on the boat, huge fans of the podcast. We were sitting out there fishing. We were running out of things to talk about because we weren't catching a whole lot of fish. And they said, "What are the topics for the podcast today?" I said, "That's a good question." I said, so I opened up my email and I read the first one, and it was like, "What do you do to get the stink off?" And I was like, "Ha, that's funny." I was like,
because we're stinking right now too.
Yeah, they look at me. What are we gonna do? So, but I mean, and my answer to them was, man, you play through it. You know, you work through it. You just keep fishing. Some people try to get creative, do something different. Like doing something different is going to change the results, but you just keep doing what you know best. You keep doing what you do best, and you work through the highs and the lows.
Now, when we had that bad day, Scott, the captain did something that I do. So I'm not passing judgment. Sometimes when you're just having a really bad day, I make a long run as if I'm going to the other side of the world and everything's going to be completely different over there. Like, I don't know what it is. It's a mental thing. I know you both have done this too. Maybe not as much anymore because you're better fishermen than you were when you were younger, but I still do this. I'm like, I'm going to go all the way to blah, blah, blah. Maybe the new moon is not happening there, or you know, it's like you're almost dumb about it. Like, man, it's like I'm going to the equator or something. I don't understand the mentality. And that captain did the same thing. Dean can attest. We were way over on Nicoya Island, and he made about a 45 hour and 15 maybe.
Yeah, we almost went to the next country.
Yeah. We did. But Scott, I guess it's just the mentality, man. It's like, I do it. Like, I'm gonna make a long run. It's different over there.
Yeah, I haven't done that in forever.
Spoiler alert.
That's been a long time since I've done anything like that. I tell people some days my employees don't show up.
Yeah,
you know, my fish just didn't come to work today. I don't know what the hell's going on with them.
They called in sick.
Yeah, I mean. And it's so weird, you know, to do it day in, day out. You get to see it a lot. Everybody thinks that we're guides and we're going to catch fish all the time, but I can go to one area and have fish all week long, and then show up the next day, and it's like a desert. Just I'm poling around, and I'm looking, and it's like, where the hell did they go? Why? Things didn't change that much. There's still shrimp here. There's still bait fish here. Why did they just pack up and leave? You know, maybe they're like that boat captain. They decided the other side of the bay was better. I don't know.
Maybe Panama.
And the thing about that boat ride is we left the dock and we went an hour into the wind. And so the whole time on this boat ride, I'm telling myself, man, once we get this over with, we're going to have the wind coming back. I was like, we're going to deal with it. And at least we'll have the wind behind us coming back. So we go an hour, we fished, pulled up from that spot, went further away in the other direction instead of working our way back. Then we went further in the other direction, and then further in the other direction, and probably one more time further in the other direction. We were damn near to Nicaragua whenever we
really
around.
Were. That's not an exaggeration.
And in my mind, And we passed some of the most beautiful places, the scenery. I don't want to be too negative about the trip. You have good days and you have bad days on fishing production. The things that we saw, the places we went, there's Kudu National Forest, the shorelines, these rivers are coming out of the mountains. Beautiful, amazing scenery. So don't want to be too negative about that. But the one thing I will be negative about is when we turned that boat around, we had an 1.5-hour boat ride back, and it was into the damn wind going both ways.
We were into the wind getting our
and the
butts
captain
whooped.
and the crew,
both directions.
The captain and the crew on that boat, they were feeling the strain worse than us. Me, John, and DJ were up on the front of the boat, knocking out an ice chest full of beer, really enjoying life. Those guys were feeling the strain worse than us. They were working hard. I mean, they put everything they had into it. And on the ride back, we even passed the harbor, which was dinner and more drinks for us. But these boys passed that to go to another reef to still give us a chance to catch a fish. And I just watched the marina pass by as I'm getting beat down on that boat. And I was like, somebody tell him we're done. But we stuck with it. I mean, it was a challenge, but it was an experience. Chalk it up to learning experience.
Yeah, and then the one big fish they hooked. You didn't mention this.
Yeah.
Big old Cabera snapper. The one fish all day. The line broke. The line busted. That guy, you could tell in his face he wanted to just kill himself. He's like the only one we got. It was late in the day.
Yeah. And whether it broke or could it got cut off. I mean, so many rocks in that area. But yeah, the line, we had line failure on that one.
So here's where the next, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and all that being said, you know, we went back 2 days later, and it was really kind of funny because, man, I was depressed. I was down. I was a beaten man. And so I'm sitting there at dinner at night, and I just couldn't shake it off. I'm like, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? The next morning, we're sitting there eating breakfast, and I could see the beach, and I knew Emilio was down there. And I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting on the food to get there, and I'm like, I was like, I'm going to the beach. I'm going to go talk to these guys. I'm going to go fishing tomorrow. Everybody at the table looks at me like, what the hell is wrong with you? They played along. I know nobody supported me, but they played along anyway. I went down to the beach. I booked us up a trip for the next day, and we caught some fish.
All right, which is a perfect transition to the next topic. Because, by the way, that night, I was so depressed and beaten, Scott. Same as Dean. I was like, man, I suck. I was actually searching like another trip for 2 days later. So when he said that, I was like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'll be good with that. But here's the thing, Scott. The fish don't know who you think you are, as Dean likes to say. They also don't know what boat you're in. We got in the rickety-est ass boat you have ever seen in your life. I'm gonna let Dean talk about this, but go ahead, and then we'll get to Scott.
Before we got in the rickety boat,
dude, this thing was a mess.
And for the people out there, so I gotta explain. You go down to the beach, and there is it was like the fishing mafia is the best way I could describe it. So the biggest dude on the beach who could whip everybody's ass is in charge. That's my guess. That's just my theory. That's how he gets that job. So one dude's in charge. You walk up to the beach. He's like, hey, you want a fishing trip? Yeah. And he decides what boat you get on. He shows you a picture of the boat. Yeah, I got this boat. You look at the picture, and then you show up in the morning. And it's like, that's not the boat you showed me a picture of yesterday.
That one's not even serviced. You're gonna have to go.
Yeah. He's like, oh yeah. The motor broke on that one last night. And so, but I got somebody good for you. Cool, whatever. We get on the little panga skiff. They taxi you out to the boat, and we're pulling up on this boat, and it's like whatever that movie was with maybe Captain Ron or whoever he was with the janky ass boat. We pull up to it. I mean, it's got moss and slime growing on the bottom of it. It was peeling the wood off on all corners. The anchor is sticking out of the hatch in the front that looked like if you grabbed it, it was going to crumble into pieces. It was so rusty. The helm, here's the kicker. The helm, the power steering on the helm had a quart of steering fluid sitting on the dash with a hose in the quart that was siphoning power steering fluid into the helm because it's leaking out the bottom so fast that he had to put it in there.
It was leaking so bad he had a constant trickle of steering fluid from the helm into the back of the steering.
I
was like,
wanted to take pictures.
He's like, y'all want to go catch some sailfish? Nah, man, we're good right here by the rocks. We're good right here.
And so,
right
so we went like 15 the day before for whatever hours that we ran. On the day that we caught fish, literally 15 minutes, because I think that's as far as the boat could go, what they were comfortable with. And we stayed really close to the shoreline, and we never went over 5 miles an hour. But I was okay. I was okay with all of those things.
So I got home and my wife goes, y'all's boat wasn't going very fast. We kept waiting for y'all to take off. I said, we did take off. That was 8 miles an hour was
its version of fast.
That was fast.
But yeah, 15 minutes, and then we started.
It was one of those. It sounded like the boat from Jaws, like click, 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 click. It was just clicking.
Yeah. Yes, it had that sound too.
But we caught a bunch of fish, so that's where Scott comes in. I know you've had some rickety ass boats. You've been on some rickety ass boats. Sometimes that's half the fun. We were having fun just trying to cross our fingers and tighten up the old cheeks to make sure that we were going to get home all right. But this might be a good story time, either yours or someone you knew. The most rickety ass fishing trip you ever took.
Yeah, my little old 14-foot John boat wasn't great. It was fine when I bought it. I bought it brand new at Montgomery Ward's in Pasadena, and a little 15-horse Chrysler Sea King on it.
Oh my God, that's what you need to say.
I was running all over the place in that boat, and as the years went on, it was a riveted boat. So you beat an aluminum boat across the bay a bunch of times with rivets in it. The rivets get loose, and then you become a bailer, and you keep a constant bail going because it's leaking everywhere. there's no getting around it. You can't tighten them up. They're rivets. It's not like you got screws in there. So that one was pretty rough. I put plywood in the floorboards to keep our feet from being wet all the time. So that helped a little bit. Yeah. But then you didn't know how much water was in there. So that was kind of bad. But that was, I don't know why I didn't think about putting a bilge pump in it, but I never did. never had a bilge pump. It didn't have a battery. It was a pull start. So there was no
that's right.
So yeah, I guess that's probably why I didn't put a bilge pump in it. But yeah, it was a fun little boat. We nicknamed it the Merry Mullet because everybody said I looked like Mullet jumping off the waves with it. And a buddy of mine still has that boat. He's still got it.
Oh, really?
I was 6 years old, and one of my old cop buddies bought it from me when I got later on when I bought another boat. And
did he pay you or you pay him?
Yeah, he gave me like $500 for it.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Well, that'll work.
Yeah, he still got it to my knowledge. Last time I talked to him, he did.
But it was an adventure, man. Dean, what's the rickety-est ass fishing trip you ever went on? Not counting the one we just went on.
It's kind of hard to top that one. That one actually.
You wouldn't have believed it, Scott.
It blocks out the memories of everything. I was actually just kind of looking through my pictures to see if I had a wide angle of that thing to show the people, but all I got was stuff off the back. I don't think I've never been on anything to compare to that, man.
No, that was one for the books. But we caught a bunch of fish. I knocked rooster fish off my bucket list, and it was a blast.
I was just glad I was within swimming distance of the shoreline, and I don't swim that far, so that's.
Jen said,
that was.
She
funny
said they kept going like, "Are they gonna go?" I came back
Yeah.
afterward. I said, "Yeah, we were
Yeah.
going. No,
Yeah.
we were. That was us
Jan
going."
and Carrie had time to say bye like 20 times. They're like, bye, bye, bye. It's like, we're still leaving. Hey, I'm still here.
All right, let's
Well,
get
on day
into-
2, when y'all got the beat down, did John get his nose beat down too, or what?
Yeah, you see that? Okay, so that was from. It's nasty, man. It's really, really nasty. If you see us on YouTube or go to the video afterward. So I had a little bit of a sunburn there, just a little bit, because I was, I wear my big stiff and
It
quick,
looks
by
like
the way.
third degree now.
Came through big time. So I wore my big wide brim hat. But when we went up in the ATVs to the forest, Wayne Forest and all that, you couldn't take your goggles off because you wouldn't be able to see with all the dust and sand coming in your face. So I had my goggles on for 4 hours, and they just kept rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing. And so now I got a battle wound from Costa Rica. But
I thought
that's
maybe
cool.
you picked up the rod when the sailfish went off and Jan whacked you.
She caught. That was a hell of a sailfish, man. She did a good job. Carrie did a good job. They were not going to be denied. That's for dang sure. All right, so let's get back into the bays here, and let's get into some fishing. First of all, I know, Dean, you said you've been out on the water. Scott, I know you're finishing up some stuff there at your house, but what is the latest? Because we're in a kind of a weird transition period right now, Scott, in terms of weather and some of the things that we're seeing out on the water. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
I'm hearing lots of good stuff on redfish, all up on the upper coast. They're schooled up, chasing shrimp. Shrimp are coming out of the marsh, and birds working over the top of them. Heard that from Laguna Madre as well, down Port Mansfield, that there was pods of reds working with seagulls hovering over them. So that's all good. And my last day out, I found, I don't know, probably 6, 7 good schools of reds, all tailed up. So we're right there. I think we're a little early actually, because usually that's about the middle of May for me. But the shrimp seem like they're a little bit ahead of schedule.
What about you, Dean?
I ain't seen no schooling reds. I don't know where this stories are coming from. Fish today, long hard day today. Tide's up good. And I just got to shake off the negative vibes, man.
It was a total beatdown. It took the life out of Dean. You very rarely see the life taken out of.
They're hanging.
We got our butts kicked.
They're hanging all over me like a black cloud. So like on the trip to Costa Rica, how many missed strikes on the sailfish? 7 times.
Yeah.
That line popped out of the outrigger. And then on the roosters, boom, we watched them, missed them. Today, I can't tell you how many redfish followed that topwater right up to the feet and just disregarded it. Cloudy, super hard to see into the water. When the sun broke out for the brief moment, you could see reds that were just lazy. I mean, they were just kind of in the grass. A couple of them went crazy and hit. I mean, a lot of dink trout, a couple of nice reds, but for the most part, man, it was missed opportunity. I don't know, man. Maybe it's me. I got the black cloud hanging over my head this week.
Well, both of those things you said have a lot to do with 2 questions we got from listeners. Let's start with the redfish, since that's what you guys were talking. And Dean, excuse me, Scott, you sent this one. It was a question from a listener. I didn't get his name, about the speed of a school of reds. I'm going to read it. I don't think I've heard this covered on the podcast. I've been consistently finding schools of reds in the mornings in the back of greens in Galveston, but they've been cruising so fast. If I can trust the speed reading on my GPS, blah, 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 let's just go on and say that they were moving fast. Have you ever noticed that what food they're currently keyed on affects how fast these schools run, is the basic question. And then you said, you're seeing shrimp everywhere right now. When you spook a red, I'm seeing shrimp jumping out around it. Like, that's not something that we've really even talked about, like how to get ahead of them, how to head them off at the pass, how fast they're moving, which also leads to how many shots you really get at them. Right, Scott?
I'm real familiar with those fast reds in the back of greens. They don't have any grass. There's not much shell back there. It's all mud. And those fish will get up and start moving like that. And they'll be going really fast until they hit a pot of shrimp. It usually happens when the shrimp have pulled out of the grass and they're schooling up, getting ready to leave the back marshes. And so they're tighter schools of shrimp. They're not all just scattered out everywhere. And there's nothing for those redfish to key on like there is down here where, they're nosing through the grass trying to find them. They're cruising. And when they hit on a school, they'll slow down and stop. It's really hard to get in front of them by poling or even with the trolling motor sometimes. You got to just watch way out ahead of them. If you fire up the big motor, you're going to put them down.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to plan your attack and see which way they're going. The only problem is a lot of times they just kind of start wandering. They're not really going in a straight line. They're hunting. And typically what that means to me is that there's not as much scattered shrimp. The shrimp are more concentrated, and you just got to keep watching them until you see them stop. And, they'll slow down when they hit a good area that's full of bait.
So you will do that. See, I think this is a great topic that we really haven't hit on. You will just sort of like wait them out, Scott?
Well, I try to keep up with them, try to get in front of them, but until they slow down, you're not going to get ahead of them. And when they're moving like that, unless you can corner them up, you see that they're going to hit a shoreline and you go 50-50, which way are they going to turn off of that shoreline and try to cut them off at the pass like that. It's a tough spot to be in because you can't fire the big motor and you can't keep up with them, and casting to them from behind them is not a good idea.
Yeah.
You're not sneaking up on them, and throwing from behind them, you're throwing over the top of them. You got to wait till they turn one way or the other and then try to just cut them off.
Now, Dean, I know you have experience with this, but not where you currently are because there is so much grass everywhere. You catch a school of redfish, you can pretty much get a hold of them a little easier, can't you?
Not necessarily, man. I find that it's easier in the muddy water because they typically don't run as far. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but down here on the clear water, you spook a school of reds, they don't quit running until they hit deep water, and chasing them and keeping up with them is very difficult. That's why when you see that school of reds, you want to put yourself in position to get the best shot at them and make sure you get at least one out of there. If you got two people to cast at the same time, you can hook up on two of them. But the reds on our flats tend to be spookier whenever they make a run, whenever they decide to leave. I mean, you can watch the wakes in, a foot of water. You can watch those wakes all the way to the drop off and they've gone bye-bye. In the dirty water, even sight casting to small schools of reds, like 2 or 3 in the dirtier water, you get a second chance, you get a third chance. And typically we don't get those in the clear water.
Right. This is a good time for both of you guys to talk about this. It's something that I know Scott and I have a little bit in the past. Not everything is textbook where, you're going up on a shoreline and there's a school coming to you right in front of you. I mean, that's perfect. Like, I'm going to sit here, wait, pick them off on this school. What a beautiful day. Very rarely is it like that. A lot of times the school's in front of you, maybe at an angle. You kind of see a little bit. You're not sure where it starts, where it ends. And I think that can be really helpful to a lot of our listeners, how we approach a school. Scott, I'm going to start with you because since we're here, it's worth talking about. Like you just said, trying to keep up with them, etc. Generally speaking, how do you even approach a school of reds? And I'm interested to see what Dean has to say.
One of the toughest parts about this time of year, when it always happens in late April, early May, those big schools start moving around out there following these shrimp. And typically we have wind this time of year. Most of the time you can count on them going into the wind. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's the current pushing with the wind and that, it drives them to go into the current. But for whatever reason, if I'm on a poling skiff, they go into the wind and just make it that much harder.
Just for your sake.
So you have to get out beside them and try to parallel them and get ahead of them a little bit. Like I said, hopefully, if you're in a little marshy area, little lakes, they're going to hit a shoreline sooner or later. And when they hit that shoreline, they got to turn. They're not going on land. So hopefully you can do the 50-50 and end up in the right spot and cut them off that way. But that's pretty much the only way you can do them when those are schools that are searching. They're not spooked. They're not running from you. They're just out hunting for food, and they're looking for a concentration of shrimp. And when they find it, they're going to shut down and start feeding. And just getting in front of them, it can be the biggest challenge, and guessing where they're going to go next.
How do you pick them off, Dean? Well, we've talked about this, edges, back, sides, but I know if you can be a little more specific for some of our listeners, you get into school, you finally get in the position that Scott just talked about. How do you pick them off?
Well, you want to lead them is your best case scenario, but I'd throw in there amongst them. I mean, I've seen, and just like you said, none of this is textbook. There's no, this is the right way to do it. There's going to be a variation to that every time you come up on them. So if you're close enough and it's proper, you get that thing right in front of the fish out in front, because what redfish see is things fleeing from them. The most natural approach is to throw something in front of it and make it run away from them. Nothing swims up to a redfish to commit suicide. Nothing jumps in the middle of a school of redfish and to think that's going to be okay. Everything is fleeing from them. So the most natural way is to throw in front. But if I have a topwater or something that's on top, I definitely want to hit the edges somewhere around the fringes of that. With a soft plastic, I mean, I'll toss it right in the middle of the school and let it sink down amongst them. And, you know, somebody in there will pick it off. But if you throw a topwater in the middle of a school, you're going to spook those guys. They're going to run away. And then you get a variety of behavior from them. If they're really focused on feeding, if they're in a real good mood, you can get away with a lot of other things. If they're just happen to be swimming and they're all looking up and that it's like they're going somewhere, they have something, they're late for a meeting or something, you can more likely to mess it up. But you know, if you got head down and tailing fish and they're really focused on feeding, you can get away with a lot more. But the fringes are always gonna, and if you hit the fringes and you don't get a bite, then you're gonna get a second chance if you don't spook the school. If you throw in the middle, it's a one-shot deal.
Go ahead, Scott. Looked like you had something to add there.
One of the problems with throwing behind the school too is in the marshes, a whole lot of times there's a bunch of little dink trout following them, and you can sometimes see it. That school of redfish will be moving across there, and then there's a dark spot behind them, and it'll be little bitty dink trout. And if you throw back there and you hook one of those little dink trout, and he starts flopping around, jumping,
screaming,
the entire school.
Yeah.
And every now and then it's a school of hardheads. I've seen that more than once, where a school of hardheads is following along behind the redfish, picking off scraps, and that's a real downer. But then again, there are times when there's a real big, big trout that's following them. So it never hurts to look back behind them. One of my customers really screwed up because we had a school going down the shoreline, and I had, we'd been doing it all day, and he knew exactly where he needed to throw, and I got him lined up. And just as he's about to throw his fly up there, and he's a good caster, he's about to throw his fly up, I said, hold up, throw behind him. He's in his middle of his false cast. He said, what? I said, throw behind him, huge trout. That was a mistake. I should have just said throw behind him, but when I said
don't say huge trout.
He sailed it about 10 feet into the cordgrass and got hung up. So that didn't work out so well. But
just say throw it.
Yeah.
Just throw it.
There's something back there. There's something back there. So that was the redfish movement. And then we got, coincidentally, I got a direct message. And I'm just gonna be honest. I have no real idea what to believe anymore, because I've heard everything on trout movement. But the trout tagging Texas, I guess, posted something about a week ago or 2 weeks ago about how much trout were moving, and they were tagging them. And I don't think this is necessarily something like to help you catch a lot more fish or anything about tactics. It's more curiosity on just trout behavior. Because he said he couldn't believe that some of the trout, and I looked it up, he's correct. The trout tagging Texas, the guides on trout movement and their life cycles and all that, He says everybody's always heard that they don't go more than 3 to 5 miles, whatever it is, from where they are. Some of these trout, Scott, were moving 30 miles, like 30 miles. Is it just depending on the bay system and where you are that these trout either just stay in the area where they've been, or moving 30 miles a trout?
Like Dean likes to say, until we can get one on this podcast, sit
I
here and
know,
put some
man.
headphones on, we can talk to them. We're
Mhm.
not going to know. I think there's probably different populations. We all know that trout in different areas look different. And when you're fishing Galveston, there's a different look of a trout that's in Trinity Bay. It looks
Mhm.
different than a lot of the trout that are in the surf. They're built different. The Trinity Bay trout are dark, real dark looking fish. But then we would catch some of those over in East Bay every now and then. It was like they'd move on down and get around the corner of Smith Point and go over to East Bay.
Just go, yeah.
And we'd start catching them. You get into a school of them and go, man, these are Trinity trout, and they just look different. I would guess that they probably move a lot more in places like that where there's a big freshwater push. Sabine, Trinity, places where they get washed out. San Antonio Bay gets washed out quite often when the Guad goes up. Now down south, that's where a lot of that trout tagging is going on, and they've just got miles and miles and miles of shallow water. That's not any different here than it is 5 miles from here or 10 miles from here. So maybe those trout just wander around a little bit more.
They feel like comfortable in that environment because it all looks the same.
Yeah,
Maybe
everything's the same.
Now, I don't know, Dean, how much this is going to be able to help people catch more fish, but it is fascinating because I've always heard 3 miles, 5 miles. That's about where they stay. This trout tagging thing says some of these fish are going 30 miles.
I mean, it'll be real interesting to collect the data as it goes on. There's always been theories of if there was not a subspecies or such, but there's trout that live in the surf and stay in the surf, and then there's trout that stay in the bays and stay in the bays, or if they migrate back and forth. Good question. Tag them, put a little collar on them speckled trout, and follow them around. I mean, we have the technology. We have
a collar around them.
We have them.
They got little antennas sticking up.
It'll be interesting. Hey, they stick them on little turtle backs and shark backs and stuff. Why not stick one on a speckled trout? But I mean, it'll be interesting, to see what the truth actually is. A lot of theories in fishing, man. A lot of theories. Everybody's got an idea of something, but what Scott said, very interesting. If you have water that pushes them, fresh water, there's a lot of different ecosystems. How do they act in this ecosystem? How do they act in a different one? So, I mean, I'm glad there's some little college student out there putting antennas on speckled trout and gathering the data.
I will say, I think it's interesting, just my years, fishing, for decades now. The trout that seem to move the most, it just makes sense. The trout that seem to move the most to me are the ones that are like what Scott was talking about. That bay system is just so similar everywhere. Or there's a big, like a Corpus Christi channel, something like that.
And so, okay, fish live underwater. Other animals live above water on land. If that relates, maybe not. But so if you have deer or wildlife that are in an area, as long as there is food there, as long as there is a food source, they will stay. If they don't have something to eat, that causes them to roam. Should be the same for fish under the water. If they're happy where they're at, if the conditions are good for them, if they have food, why would they leave? Is there something in their DNA that tells them, now I got to be 30 miles up the road. I got an appointment I got to be at.
Maybe they went on vacation.
Yeah. They're over here in Port O'Connor. They want to go down to Port Isabel for the beach party.
Exactly.
But I mean, I don't know. There's probably a lot of varying reasons of why certain fish move. But you would think if they have everything in one space where they're why burn energy to go somewhere else into the unknown? Good questions, all of them.
As the guy who just got back from Costa Rica.
That's right.
When he fishes every day in his backyard.
Yeah.
The rum drinks are more
We had some solid rum drinks, man.
They're different down there. And on a side note, so for the past week, every morning I've been getting up to go fishing in Costa Rica. I made me a badass rum drink, coconut, pineapple, rum. This morning I was filling up my jug with just plain old water, and it just didn't feel right.
Didn't hit the same.
Didn't hit the same.
Hey, where do you guys where do you guys fall on these what do they call them, beach runners or whatever, surf runners on trout?
I've heard that my whole life, that those all of a sudden there'll be fish that show up in the land cut that are surf, they call them the surf runners, that all of a sudden show up. It never made any sense to me. You look at a map, that land cut is a long ways from any opening into the Gulf. That, I don't know. I've heard it my whole life.
I've heard it my whole life.
I just don't.
I've bought into some of it.
Yeah. Hopefully the tagging will put some of that to rest on what's really going on. But yeah, I've heard people say, you catch a trout on the surface, like, look at it, it's different. It's like, man, looks like same speckled trout I saw on the other side.
Now their mouths can be more yellow. That's the thing I've always heard. They've got a
real
bright, I'm just telling you what I've heard for decades. They got the real bright yellow mouth.
Well, so and this isn't the first time that they've tagged trout and done studies on that. That's been done over the years. There have been plenty of trout that have been caught in the surf, tagged, and then recaught in the bay, and vice versa. So it has been going both ways. There's probably a certain amount of trout that do live in the bays their whole life. There's probably a certain amount that live in the surf and stay there. But okay, so do trout spawn in the surf? Help me out with that one. Does anybody know? We know they spawn in the bays. There's documented evidence. So if they don't spawn in the surf, there's certainly not trout out there that live their whole life there, because they're going to have to come into the bay to complete the life cycle. So I'm not a scientist, but I just pretend to be one sometimes. And I'm going to say that it's still a myth.
Scott, how do you explain the bright yellow mouth on what people are calling surf runners, tide runners, whatever?
I don't know. I know that there are different.
Dean hates this. He doesn't buy it. He doesn't buy one bit of it. He doesn't buy one.
No toothbrushes out there.
I know that based off of what they do with the hatcheries, that there are trout subspecies that are in different bay systems, that the DNA is slightly different on a Galveston trout than it is a Laguna Madre trout. And so they try to, when they do the hatcheries, they try to put those trout back in the same areas that the brood stock came from. Yeah, that one goes beyond our level of education.
Right.
I just know
above our pay grade.
We're getting like this is a polarizing topic. Like Sherman says, I've always heard they have bigger shoulders too. I don't know. I do know I've seen trout with real bright yellow mouths and some that have basically nothing. It's just bizarre to me.
Well, some have no specks and some have specks.
This is true.
Some have, I don't know, man. I'm out of guesses. I just drive the boat, man.
Yeah. Hey, let's take a ride.
For me, it always made more sense that, yes, like where Dean is, they can come and go out that channel right there. Where I'm at over here, they've got Pascavallo, they've got the jetties, they can come and go. I just don't see how they're going to migrate from the land cut through the Port Mansfield jetties. That is a long
and
ways.
Why would they need to is the question. Why?
Yeah, sure.
Why would they
that's
need
that's
to
the
do
biggest
that?
thing that always has been a question in my mind. Because I can believe it. I mean, I have believed it. I've not believed it in terms of this whole tide runner thing and in and out of the bays and all that. What I've never really what I always go back to is they're opportunistic. I mean, what does Scott always say? Fish got to eat. They're going to be opportunistic about where their location is, and they're not going to bypass opportunities to eat just so they can go see the surf. You know, that's just not going to happen. You're not going to, let's just skip this meal. We'll get something later. No, that's just not how they work.
Yeah, we're stuck.
We're stuck, which is a good time to lead to the next question before we get to what would Scott do, what would Dean do. Pretty interesting question, very broad based, and it's good for both of you guys. You both have run out on those on the on the near shore and jetties and all that. So given that there was no hurricane this year, knock on wood, there won't be another one, and no real cold snap, what kind of summer action are you both expecting? I love this question because this is what gets you all fired up and you start rubbing your hands together and say, oh man, it's going to be this kind of summer and this is the kind of fishing. Scott, I'm going to start with you. Like we had a pretty mild, hurricane season into October, and then pretty mild winter. We've got a little more distance away from the freezes and the bad weather, etc. What kind of summer can we expect?
Well, as far as the beachfront goes, I think it'll be just about normal. I mean, every year is different with the wind. Last year we had good winds. We had southeast breezes that kept the surf pretty clear. The year before, I had that constant nagging southwest and west, and everything was dirty. It was mud 200, 300 yards out off the beach. It was just nasty. So a whole lot of it depends on what the weather pattern sets up. And if we get our typical southeast breeze, 5 to 15 mile an hour southeast breeze, the surf's going to be clear enough, and we won't have all that dirty water. When we had the dirty water, I did okay on the tarpon. Couldn't see them, unless they rolled up on top. But there was just tons of bait fish right along that edge of the mud, and it actually kind of concentrated things a little bit for me. The cleaner water, they just kind of spread out more. It's much more enjoyable to fish that cleaner water, though. The dirty water, every time I came around 2 years ago, every time I came around the end of the jetties, I was just like y'all down in Costa Rica. It just felt beat down as I knew it was going to be a rough day trying to figure out where the fish went. So a lot of it will depend on the sargassum weed too. Last year, they had all these predictions about it was going to be this massive weed year, that it was going to be just thick everywhere, and I hardly saw any. I don't know what happened to it. Not sure where it went, but I didn't get hardly any of it around here. I was kind of looking forward to it, seeing triple tail, cobia, dolphin, all that stuff loves those weed lines, but I never saw one good formed up weed line all summer.
Now that's offshore. Let's start with you, near shore, Dean, jetties and such, because I do have a question when it comes to the bays and what kind of summer we're having, but should be pretty electric, given that the weather's been mild. We got no big problems per se.
Well, the problem with that question and that theory is those fish that come here in the summer don't live here in the winter. So I don't think they care what the weather did. I don't think they care how cold it was. We had a mega freeze. There wasn't the big freeze, but we had a pretty nasty freeze the last winter, and we had amazing kingfish through the summer. So they migrate from long distances. So I mean, I don't know if our local conditions matter to how that plays out in the summer.
Okay.
I've had, but
go ahead.
It does vary. I mean, we've had years whenever the sargassum, when the seaweed comes in, that brings tons of bait fish, tons of little fish. Always guaranteed great fishing when the sargassum is there. This past year we had really clean water and the kingfish were still amazing. So how those things migrate, where they come from, is probably a bigger influence than our local conditions.
All right, let's talk locally. James brought it up about how it's already hot, in Southeast Louisiana. I'm thinking, I'm gonna start with you on this one, Dean. Like very mild, hot, rising temperatures. What's it going to do for the grass beds, all the grass and life in the flats? Is that going to make affect the fishing one way or the other?
You talking about like the seagrass that's growing out there?
No, yeah, that's growing. Yeah.
Well, the seagrass, I don't think the temperature and the heat and the temperature of the water has as much detrimental effect as the boat traffic that's on it. What I have watched take place over the last 20 years, the degradation of the seagrass is due to the boats running over it, chopping it up, is more of a concern than the temperature and any of the weather conditions that take place. The seagrass has grown for eons. It has thrived through all types of weather events. It is not thriving through the pressure that's put on it by the everyday. Ransom Flats, Ransom and Dagger Flats, right out here outside my back door. The most used to be one of the most lush, beautiful, pristine seagrass beds you ever saw. No matter if the wind blew 30 or 40 miles an hour, it stayed crystal clear all the time. That is no longer the case. In the short 20 years that I've been out there, my prediction is that in the next 20 years, there will not be seagrass on Ransom and Dagger Flats. It is chopped up. It is cut up. And so on a busy weekend, just the propellers that run across it turn it dirty. You can go out there in the morning and it's clear. And by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, from shoreline to shoreline, you can see where 50 boat trails ran across it. And it turns muddy just from the boats. So if you want to concern yourself with what is stressing the seagrass of South Texas, and especially Redfish Bay, it is the pressure by the amount of people that are on it every day.
Yeah. Scott, bay fishing.
If you want to look at it, if you want to, do your own investigation, the satellite imagery that we have available on your iPhone, just open your iPhone, go set your maps, Google Maps on satellite, zoom in on it. It's crazy how detailed you can get. There's really even better stuff if you go search it out on the internet. You look at those. So 20 years ago, our good friend, Dr. Bill Harvey, who is responsible for getting the seagrass laws that we now have that protect the grass, he was doing seminars. Before there was YouTube, he was getting the word out in little private seminars. Back then, there were transparencies that you laid on top of a little lighted screen, and it had a monocle that you put on there. That was how we looked at seagrass scars back then. Now you can do it in the comfort from your living room. And so it was an issue on areas that had high traffic areas where the real popular cuts are, where the boats run in and out constantly. You can see scars where those boats run across there. Those cuts today do not have a blade of grass in them. I mean, the grass has been mowed to the mud. It is gone. And you go just randomly, every square inch, every blade of grass in Redfish Bay, from Rockport to Ingleside to Port Aransas, has a propeller scar on it. There's not a piece that has not been run over. Every square. There's oyster reefs out there. You go look at the low tide, and the oyster reefs have prop scars run across them. And that is what's left of the oyster reefs. The oyster reefs that used to be live and gnarly 20 years ago are a pile of shell now. Those oysters are dead and gone. So there's more pressing factors, in my opinion, than weather conditions that are detrimental to the seagrass.
And Scott, everything he said, I know you've experienced it. You don't have to elaborate on that, but I do want you to elaborate on that affects why we're all here fishing. It just directly affects, what we're talking about.
Yeah, Dean's dead on. I mean, I'm seeing it. It's changed the way that it used to be. It was you fish the potholes around here. And, you had big grass flats and you had these potholes. And the pothole, I get people all the time. What is a pothole? What does it look like? It's just a little bit of a depression in a vast area of seagrass that is white sand, and we would fish the edges of them. We'd just ease up, fish them. And now it's kind of weird. It's just solid grass. I don't see the potholes around Port O'Connor anymore. There's a few that don't say that they're all gone or anything, but it's not like it was. Used to look like a golf course with sand traps. It was just, they were scattered around and they held fish. They held bait fish and its edges, and we were fishing the edges of those potholes, and that's how we caught our trout quite often along these grassy shorelines. Now it's just like a lawn. The areas that are still holding grass, it's just all solid grass, so you have to move around a lot more. The fish are going to move more.
Yeah.
Sometimes up to 30 miles apparently. But they as the grass grows, I think where you were headed with that was, as we get into the summer, that grass is going to keep growing up, in the areas where it's still around. And then you get a low tide day and it's going to be all the way to the top. And that changes your fishing. From what I'm seeing right now, the grass seems a little bit ahead of schedule. Like
That's what I was wondering.
It's getting a little taller than it normally would this time of year. And I've already had some spots on low tides that were unfishable because of it. The grass was already to the top and laid over when the tide went down.
Top waters, baby.
Right now, the DOA PT7, it'll get through all that. But I think right now, I mean, I just checked a few minutes ago. My tide is up 1.5 feet right now, so that's not going to be a problem for me tomorrow. The tides, it's typical. Late spring, we got the southeast winds blowing pretty hard, and it'll come
and
on
a
up.
full moon coming up.
Yeah, and a full moon, all that stuff. But the biggest thing is, as soon as we get into those low tides, middle of summer, July, August, that's gonna really have some effect on you. When the grass grows up as high as it's getting and then lays over, and you can't work anything through it.
Yeah. By the way,
and the variable,
go ahead.
The variable that comes in the summertime is tropical weather. So and that's happened in the past too, where you expect low tides in the middle of summer, but if you do have some tropical activity offshore, and if you have consistent tropical activity, then you get high tides that will be that will keep that seagrass underwater. But that is a variable for summer. I mean, you can look ahead and expect it, but that can change. During the winter, there's nothing to interrupt the low tides.
I blame you, Scott, by the way. I'm all in on that DOA stuff now. I've been communicating with Mark. We got to get him on. Yeah. You talk about a trout catching son of a gun. You talked about it when we had our little seminar at the fishing show, but I've talked to him here and there. So you may have noticed I put his little logo up there. We agreed to hop on board. So he's DOA. I've been wanting to do it, that PT7, and this is absolutely something that I've been throwing since you showed it to me, about 2 years ago now, and on that big time grass. It's awesome. I'm determined to catch a big old trout on one of those snakes that he gave me at the fishing show. And then he's got
man.
I'm telling you, man, I am so determined. I've never been more determined. Every time, in fact, last time I was with Dean, I was like, tell me when we get into some good mud, man. I'm gonna throw this okay. I gotta catch a big old trout or something on that snake. So anyway, shout out to Mark, man. He's joining us here as a partner now, and they're a monster. It's a great company, man. I know, Scott, you're friends with him, but just glad to have him on, and we're gonna be throwing all kinds of stuff from DOA now.
Yeah, we were talking about the schools of reds earlier, and that's one of the best things in the world. To throw into a school of tailing reds is a little DOA shrimp. And that's what they're hunting. That's what they're looking for, is shrimp. and that thing, you can land it really, really quiet. You know, it doesn't. You can put it right in the middle of a big school and let it settle, and it doesn't spook them. You know, it's kind
Yeah.
of like throwing a fly at them.
It's awesome.
Like,
All right.
that gold shrimp is
mhm.
money on a school of reds.
Well,
made a
I'm about
living.
to.
Made a living with those things for about 10 years.
Which one? Say it again.
That called it the golden shrimp. It's clear with gold flake.
Yeah.
Yep. It
I'm
looks
all
the
about
most real. If you go up to a bait stand and look in the shrimp deal and watch the shrimp swimming around,
Yeah.
and then take a look at one of those when you put it in the water, and it's
Mhm.
about as close to an actual shrimp as you can get.
Badass.
Yeah,
I'm in.
ain't no-
I mean, I've always thrown them here and there, but I'm really excited about the snake and the.
Man, you put one under a popping cork.
Hey
That's
now,
money.
hey now, you're talking my language.
That's
All
money
right.
right there.
Speaking of now, I'm going to be doing more videos of that. What would Scott do? What would Dean do? I would say put on a windbreaker. That's for dang sure.
I was cold today.
It's
was.
blowing like crazy, man.
I was
Go ahead.
underdressed.
Thursday might be the best day, and it's blowing to 26. Friday, at least where I'm looking, 33 to 25 to 33. Saturday, man, we're gonna get out of this wind eventually, Scott, aren't we?
June.
Hope so.
June.
Yeah, I've got a couple supposed to be fishing with me on Sunday that listen to the podcast. We may be rescheduling that.
Yeah,
It's 23 gusting to 36 Sunday morning.
yeah.
Man, dude, I got Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday booked, and I don't know how I'm gonna spend that, but
Lots of drift
Yeah.
socks.
Lots and lots
I
of
don't-
drift
I
socks.
don't think there's enough socks.
Not enough socks for this.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna fish in the harbor.
Yeah. Little dropping
You like the
some
guys in the rickety boat.
dropping some shrimp off
It's
the
gonna
dock.
be a short ride today, boys.
In fact, we're going in my truck. We're gonna go to the pier. We're gonna go to the jetty. This is real short ride.
Tomorrow
yeah.
looks about as good as anything if you can get out there on Wednesday and give it a shot, because
Yeah.
I've got some ideas about where I'm going to head. This water came up pretty quick, and so I'm not sure that the fish have followed yet and gone
Yeah.
way back in there. I'm hoping that they are, because these folks want to sight cast,
Mhm.
and if the fish haven't followed the higher water just yet, and they're sitting out there where they've been, now they got an extra 1.5 foot water on top of where they were already.
Yeah.
That makes it a little tough on sight cast. I'm going to go patrolling some of the very back waters and just see if they've moved in yet. Hopefully they
Yeah.
have. If it pushed the shrimp in, it'll push the redfish in.
Well,
And
for what it's worth, the fish I caught today were very, very shallow on a super high tide, and they were way back where they haven't been in a long time.
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to have to go look for. They're going to be up, back in the trees.
Yeah.
And actually today, and it should continue that way through the full moon, this is the first time I've been able to fish those areas
Mhm.
because it has not been as high as it is today.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be going to places right tomorrow that have been dry over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Really?
And, literally dry ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy high tide today,
Mhm.
but it's dropping out overnight, but it's coming in strong. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the tides are strong. All that is in your favor.
Yeah.
But imagine how strong it is with a 36-mile-an-hour wind behind it.
Ooh, baby. I want to go down there and run my boat, but I might have to put that off a little bit. But all right, boys. And also, if you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Podbean is what I would recommend right now. And don't forget about Carry the Load. I saw Camille lurking. I shouldn't. That's kind of a bad connotation. But I saw Camille back there. Maybe lurking is not the right word. There, she's lurking. And we're going to be on her team on Memorial Day for Carry the Load. And you can see that on the Bite Me group page and get that done. Otherwise, hope you catch up some fish. Be careful in that wind, man. Thanks to everyone here. Missed you last week, but I hope you enjoyed the offshore show. and business is picking up. We're going to be picking up some more fish here and there, and obviously temperatures warming and all that. You guys catch them up. Be careful. We will talk to you next time.